I had moved around so much and I had adapted so easily that in the back of my mind, I was like, Germany is going to be a piece of cake.
Yeah.
It's probably going to be like all the other countries I've been to, but it was the complete opposite and it shocked me a bit.
Welcome to the Germany Experience, the podcast about life in Germany as seen through the eyes of outsiders. Welcome to it. You can go to thegermanyexperience.de and there you can get links to subscribe to the podcast. You can browse through all of the episodes, sign up for my newsletter, contact me, and much more. Now, I need your help with making the podcast better. I'm doing a listener survey, and you don't have to give me your email address or even your name. You can keep it anonymous. I don't mind. I just want your opinions on the show. So basically things that you like, things that you don't like. For example, sometimes I do some talking before getting to an interview, which I'm doing right now. Do you like this? Do you wish that I would just shut up and get to the interview? Or do you wish that I would talk more? God forbid, I don't think anyone wishes that. Let me know. I want to know. It's this question and a few others just to help me understand what you like about the show and what you don't like. Go to the link in the show notes and take part in my listener survey. As I said, it's anonymous. If you want to stay anonymous, just stay anonymous. Something else happened last week. City Starlings, which is a Munich-based blog, posted a blog post called 10 podcasts you should be listening to if you are an expat in Germany. And obviously, I am mentioning this because I'm on the list. They did a great job of collecting 10 podcasts. And wow, 10 podcasts about being an expat in Germany. Things have really changed since the early days when I moved to Germany. But now you can listen to 10 podcasts. And it's a great list, and you should definitely check out the other podcasts on this list. But here's the write-up that they wrote about the German experience, this podcast that you're listening to right now, just in case you didn't know. Sean Behrens is an expat from South Africa living in Germany and the host of this fun podcast. If you live in Germany or plan to move to Germany, you will find his diverse set of guests relatable and a pleasure to listen to. Sean's good humor and upbeat demeanor not only make the conversation flow with his guests, but it also makes you want to pull up a chair and sit at the table with them. So thank you, City Starlings, for including me on this list and for putting together such a cool list. I think if you're listening to this podcast, if you like this, you will definitely like those other podcasts on the list. Now, why don't you pull up a chair and sit at the table with us as I get to my guest in this episode? And she is someone that I had on my list for a long time since I discovered her Instagram profile. And it's for obvious reasons. Her name is Tania, and she was born in Kenya. And she runs the Instagram account and blog, An African Abroad. Tania spent some time in several African countries, including my home country of South Africa. And she's now ended up in Germany. Tania is such an inspiration with how much she gives back to Africa. And one of the ways that she does this is Swahili Secrets, which is a travel service where you can book tours and safaris in Kenya. She was working very closely with friends and contacts back in Kenya to provide these services. But of course, coronavirus has put a stop to just about all of tourism. And these people that she was working with now have nothing to fall back on. So Tania has started selling some Africa-inspired accessories on SwahiliSecrets.com, and she's giving 20% of the sales back to the community, which is just incredible. So you should definitely go to SwahiliSecrets.com and take a look at some of the items there. I've put a link in the show note as well. And the stuff that she's made is just beautiful. She's got some hand-stitched bento bags, face masks, and more. There's also a Swahili recipe book where all of the sales go to an NGO. And if you want to see some of the stuff, I'll be posting an Instagram story this week because I bought some stuff from Swahili Secrets, and I will be doing, I guess you could say, an unboxing of sorts on Instagram. So follow me on Instagram, the.germany.experience. And yeah, you'll see some of the things that's available at Swahili Secrets. Now, in our chat, Tania spoke to me about why she loves Germany, but how her heart is still in Kenya, about the danger of losing your identity when you integrate into a new country, and how she's kept true to herself. Tania just exudes warmth and empathy and openness. And I came away from our discussion very inspired and determined now to do more for my own home country of South Africa. Here is Tania. You are from Africa like I am, and I must say you are the first African that I've had on the show, which is it's kind of embarrassing because I am also African, as I said, and it's taken me 53 episodes to get a fellow African on the show. But welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. It's really exciting to be on here, and especially as the first African, and especially as a Kenyan.
Yeah, exactly, as both of them. So we're going to get to all of that. I mean, we've got a lot to talk about because you're a very busy woman and you've got lots going on, and you've got an interesting story. But let's start maybe giving me your background. You said you come from Kenya, but maybe give me an idea of just how
of course,
things came along.
It's always so funny when I start talking about my background because it can be quite complicated.
Yeah.
I did move around a lot. So it's actually funny that you say Africa, because I do consider myself African because I lived in 5 African countries.
What?
So, I know. So I was actually born in Kenya. Basically, maybe I backtrack a bit. I'm half English, half Madagascan. So actually my parents met in Madagascar.
Okay.
And after that, my dad, he's from the UK, so he got a job in Kenya, and somehow they fell in love with the country.
Right.
But not long after that, because my dad was really into Africa at that time, so that's how we ended up moving because of his jobs. So I was born in Kenya, and then I moved to Uganda, Botswana, South Africa as well.
Interesting.
And a bunch of other places, to be honest. It's always so complicated, like I said. But recently I just moved to Germany. So I'd say 4 years ago, 4.5 years I've been in Germany so far.
Okay. So 4 years. Okay. So we've got a lot to get through because first of all, why so many countries in Africa? What was it for your dad's job or your mom's job?
Yeah, it was for my dad's job, and it wasn't necessarily something that, like, he wasn't like, a lot of people ask me, was he a diplomat? Was he, I don't know anything else, but he just really enjoyed exploring Africa. So even before I was born, he had already seen a lot of North Africa, a lot of Southern Africa. So at this point, he was seeing East Africa. And because he was moving around a lot, we, of course, as a family went together. And we did that so often that now it's kind of in me to keep on going. So I just carried on after I graduated. I went to Thailand, for example. I kept on going. And it's not necessarily a good thing, because I think at some point I have to settle down.
Okay. Yeah. But I know some people who have not settled down their entire lives, that they've got that kind of thing where their roots are wherever they are for whenever they're there, and then they move on again. So that's quite interesting.
Yeah, that's true.
So I was quite surprised to hear that you said Thailand was in between there. So you didn't even go straight from Africa to Germany. There's some steps that happened in between as well. Yeah,
also including Austria, actually. Basically, like I said, it's complicated, right? So basically, so I grew up in Kenya, right? That's where I had my education. And normally, when you're fortunate enough, you can study abroad. And so I did so in South Africa. I went to boarding school, and then I went to university there. Mm-hmm. So I studied tourism management. And the reason for that was to actually travel more.
Okay.
So part of that is I did an internship in Thailand.
Okay.
As one of the things. And it was amazing there. I really, really enjoyed it.
So before we get to your Germany experiences, I have to take this chance and ask you about South Africa, because obviously I'm South African. So I'm always interested to hear when people spend some time in South Africa. So you went to boarding school and then university there. So you were there for quite a few years.
Yeah, altogether it was 7 years.
7 years. Okay.
Yeah. And honestly, it's this country, I mean, sometimes I feel like I'm cheating on Kenya, but South Africa is really stunning. I mean, it's like, I think you've heard it probably as a South African, it's like one world in one country, because it really is.
It is.
It's like the mountains, the forests, the landscapes, the people, it's just everything in one.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I really enjoyed it. I would have loved to stay longer. Like I said to you before, I would have liked to live there. Yeah, but just, it's not that safe, unfortunately. Otherwise, I probably would have just chosen that as a destination to continue living in.
Yeah, that's also the reason why my wife and I left as well, was just that general security and not feeling safe there, because that's really the only problem. And it's
sadly, yeah.
Yeah. And you can live there. I mean, it's not, if you know what you're doing and you're careful enough, you can live there, but there's just too much left to chance sometimes. And you just think, and it's a real pity.
It is. And, here's the interesting part is that the 7 years that I lived there, nothing actually happened to me. So I didn't have any incidences. It's just that feeling of insecurity,
Exactly.
you don't want to live like feeling like you have to watch over your shoulder. Or, I mean, it was amazing for me to walk at night in Germany in the
Yes.
streets.
Yes.
I was like, wow,
Yes.
this is such a luxury.
I know it is, and it's a strange feeling at first when we first came here, and you get exactly like you say, you can go at midnight and walk through the city center, and you just don't do that in South Africa. You just can't do that. You can't.
There's no way you can do that. Yeah.
No.
So I think, I mean, okay. So basically, I lived a lot of the time in developing countries, and it's my first time actually in the developing world, let's say. So it's been funny because it's been a little bit difficult to adjust to, not in a bad way, not in a good way. It's just been me adapting. And part of this is also what you said, like, for example, the security. I'm like, wow, okay, things are a little bit different here.
Yeah. Well, I must say, it makes my heart so happy when people tell me that they've been to South Africa and that they love their time there, because, I still love the country immensely.
Yeah,
but
definitely.
Your nationality is Kenyan.
So I was born in Kenya, so Kenyan by birth, but my nationality, it's like, again, it's funny because I don't feel British. That's my nationality.
Oh, really?
But I don't feel it even remotely. But I just hold the passport. So it's always an interesting thing because a passport at the end of the day for me is just a paper. It doesn't necessarily explain who you are.
No. I have the exact same thing because I had to give up my citizenship to become a German citizen. I'm a German citizen now. And it was a difficult thing at first when the option came up to do it. But then eventually I had that exact same feeling as you. It's just a piece of paper. It doesn't define me. I lived in South Africa for most of my life. I am a South African. It doesn't matter what passport I have. I am South African. Now I'm not exactly South African, but my roots are South African. Now I don't identify fully as German. I'm a German citizen. But again, that passport doesn't mean I'm a German because it's just a piece of paper. So I have very much I wouldn't say an identity crisis, but I don't fit in to anything specifically. And it's a strange situation. And maybe that's something you have as well.
Exactly similar for me because I mean, I never grew up in the UK. I hardly visited the UK, so I have no connection to it. So probably same for you. Like, I mean, the fortunate thing is that this passport gives us access to certain things.
Exactly.
So I'm very fortunate to have it, but at the same time, it's not really who I am. I don't know the culture. I'm just Kenyan. That's why I always call myself Kenyan because I'm Kenyan by birth. So.
Yeah. And how long did you live in Kenya? Was there a formative period of your life that you spent there?
So basically we moved back to Kenya when I was 13 years old. And my family has been living there ever since. My parents both retired there. So if ever I go and visit family, it's always directly straight to Kenya.
Right. So let's talk about your path to Germany. How did it end up that you landed up here? Because you could have landed up literally anywhere by the sounds of things. So what happened? What made it Germany?
Yeah, that's so funny because if someone had asked me maybe a few years back, hey, Tania, you're going to be in Germany, I'd be like, you're kidding. Like, why would I do that? Yeah. Actually, the reason I initially came to Germany was actually out of love. I had met somebody and then that's where the interest came about. Unfortunately, that relationship didn't go so well along the lines, but I did decide to stay, especially because I was exposed to the German lifestyle. And I told you before, but it's really nice living here. It's a really easy way of life as compared to everything that I was used to, especially growing up in Africa. So it did have its challenges trying to adjust to the cultures, but initially that's how I ended up here and ended up staying, and we'll probably stay.
We'll probably stay. Wow, that's quite something because, like you said, you always have this urge to move on, but you're feeling like this is somewhere that you can put your roots down and stay along. I
hope so. I mean, I am feeling it in myself that I want to settle down. I mean, I've been constantly moving all the time.
Yeah. But
now that I'm in Germany, I just see how easy it is to settle down here. Like, this is the place that's right. It's almost stress-free.
Yes.
There's just so much going for you. So there's a lot of pros in it. So I'm like, okay, maybe this is a good place to raise a family and just, I mean, I would retire in Kenya, but
Okay.
for the most part, I think this is where I would build a life.
Build a life. That's very interesting. So let's talk about, you said that you had some time that you had to adjust to life in Germany. So let's talk about that. What were the points of adjustment? How difficult was it before, when you came here in the early years?
Yeah, I think, you know what, I didn't pay any attention to what Germany would be like when I came here initially, because I had moved around so much and I had adapted so easily that in the back of my mind, I was like, Germany is going to be a piece of cake.
Yeah.
You know, it's probably going to be like all the other countries I've been to, but it was the complete opposite. And it shocked me a bit because firstly, English is not spoken so much here.
Yeah.
And also culturally, it's a little bit different to what I've been around all my life. So I think for the most part, it was the language barrier that was really the big challenge for me, and also a few of the cultural differences.
Okay. And what are the cultural differences that struck you about Germany that made you maybe feel a little off kilter here?
Yeah, definitely the directness.
Yeah.
It's very straightforward. I mean, if you actually Google, you'll find that Kenyans are the least direct.
Really?
And they are the least. So when I had to also learn the language, it felt very off for me, because I was like, even when the language is spoken, it's very direct. It sounds a little bit harsh in a way.
Yeah.
So that was the thing that for the most part and initially made me feel a little bit uncomfortable. And I didn't realize how indirect Kenyans were actually, to be honest, or how my life was. I was like, wow, okay, so I always thought I was a direct person. Turns out I actually wasn't.
Yeah. Direct in relation to other Kenyans perhaps, but then when you come over here, it's so far in the other direction that you're not even close. Yeah. So, and how did you get over that language learning hurdle and that dealing with that culture shock?
Yeah, I think at some point I had to accept it. I think it took a while for me to get there. And here's the interesting part. When I learned the language, so I have this thing where I can adapt easily, right? And so I actually mimic the culture sometimes.
Okay.
So I actually started to mimic German, but I wasn't necessarily speaking it. I just knew the certain slangs or the certain ways to ask for things. But then I wasn't really speaking. I was more like mimicking. So I just had to accept, okay, you need to understand the language. You need to understand just the basics. And as hard as that was, it did make a difference.
Yeah. Do you think that mimicking helped understand the culture as well? Because you were mimicking the language, but it sounds like when you say mimicking, you're just making it's more the mannerisms as well that was coming into it. So that helped you maybe get into the culture a bit.
Yeah, I did. And I think that's actually probably another reason why I found it challenging, because I was getting too much into the culture that it wasn't necessarily myself. So I was doing actions or saying things and I was like, but this is not how I would normally, act or react to things. And I think along the lines, I was like, okay, maybe I'm losing myself a little bit. And this is actually, if we go into all the work that I do, this is why I keep such a strong connection to Kenya, because I'm too afraid to lose that part of me, because it's what keeps me sane. Yeah.
And it's who you are, really.
Exactly.
Okay. So you kind of had to pull that back a little and bring Tania a bit more to the forefront.
That's basically what I had to do. Yeah.
Because it's been a recurring theme on this podcast, the different personalities that people have in different languages. And and I think a part of that is the culture. When you're speaking German, I didn't think of it like this until you said it right now, but you're actually also mimicking what you see from other people and how the culture is behaving and bringing that into your language. And that's why the personality becomes different, because you're actually mimicking. How grounded do you feel now with regards to who you are and who you are in German and in Germany?
Yeah, right now I would say I'm very content. It took a lot of work though to get here, but I'm very content. And especially because I found the right work that I wanted to do. I felt more ease with the language the more that I learned it. And then just understanding Germans. I realized that I kind of misunderstood their culture because, it's very direct. I mean, it's not a bad thing. Sometimes I did take offense to certain things, but it's not necessarily that they're being rude or anything like this. It's just their culture. And so I just had to understand it, accept it, and kind of, just move on. And at this point now, I'm just quite happy with the way things are, especially because I've kind of found myself and kept that connection with back home.
Mm-hmm. You said you had to understand Germans. What did you have to understand about them specifically?
I mean, just because I always get a little bit nervous when I speak about Germans.
Uh-oh. It's fine. No one listens to this podcast.
No one listens, yeah. You know what? I mean, it's just like really the simple things, they're... When I first came, I was surprised that no one really talks to one another. Whereas in Kenya, we are very warm people. Yeah. You will always see a stranger and you will always make conversation. Yeah. And here it's the opposite. It's like you're smiling at someone and it's almost like, why are you looking at me even?
Yeah.
So it was little things like this. And when I say I misunderstood it, it's not because of that. I mean, the country is doing so well in itself.
It is.
So there's things that you have to do in order for it to function, right? And so I feel like they're just all caught up in making their system work, or just a bunch of other things that I might have misunderstood it.
Yeah, and I think a big part of integrating into any culture is understanding the culture. You don't have to like all of the aspects about it, but you do have to understand it, and in a way, you are a guest, even though we're both living here and everything.
Exactly, that's true.
Okay, maybe guest is the wrong word, but we've chosen to live here, and we gotta kind of try and accept the culture. I also would say that this is a safe place to talk about Germans, because I always preface it that we do it with love. We do it with love because
we do it with a lot of love. That's true.
Because we've chosen to live here, right? So we've chosen the good over the bad. Or we've chosen to see the good over the bad. So
that's true. I have a lot to say when it comes to Germany and all the good stuff. I mean, there are plenty of reasons why we're here, right?
Exactly. So let's talk about that. Let's talk a bit about that. Why you're staying in Germany? So you said you kind of fell in love with it and got to feel a bit better in the culture. But what are the big reasons that you decided to stay?
I think for me, more so is the lifestyle here. It's very stress-free. You have a lot of things that you can fall back on. The system just works really well.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, it's amazing. The education, the healthcare, everything just functions perfectly. Okay, I wouldn't say perfectly.
Not always perfectly, but it works. It does work.
It works so well. It works so well, and I commend this country for doing so well. But yeah, that's especially the reason why I plan to stay here, and probably for a longer time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is. I think it's something that is very clear to people from Africa and other developing countries as well. When we come here and we see how things function, people don't always realize the simple things that are difficult in a country like South Africa, or like, I should imagine, I don't know, but like Kenya, things that they take for granted here. Like you said, the educational system.
Exactly.
And so many other things. And there's so many checks and balances here to make sure that things stay running smoothly, that corruption is limited. And it's something that's very strange when you come here from one of those countries to see, like, wow, this can work. And part of me really wishes, like, how do we teach Africa? I mean, not to say that these things will be a fit for Africa because it's different cultures, but there must be things that we can take with to say, this is how we keep things running, or this is how we make sure that the system works. But it's
true. It's a very good question, actually. I've asked myself this question repetitively since I've been here. I'm like, how can I take this back home?
Yeah.
To be honest, I don't really know yet, but definitely, I think it's such a good idea to take some of the things from here and implement them, or just like, because Africa has so much to offer.
It does.
It really does.
It does. Just about the reasons for staying in Germany. You've got a lot of projects, and we're going to get to the projects that you're involved with in a bit. But one of the things that you did was release a podcast, an African Abroad podcast. And I think there were 2 episodes, and then there haven't been any more episodes.
No.
But on the second episode, I think it was, you were talking about exactly this and saying the reasons that you decided to stay in Germany, and one of the reasons you spoke about was also the safety net that you have here. So
exactly.
Maybe you can speak to that.
I mean, there's been experiences that I've had in Germany. For one, I mean, I've went through multiple jobs, two of which I was let go from.
Oh,
One because the company actually closed down, and second because of the situation now, Corona. But both were very, very smooth transitions. It wasn't something that was so hard. And I tried to imagine if this happened to me back in Kenya, it would be a totally different situation.
Yeah.
Firstly, you wouldn't get any support. That's just a no-go back in Kenya. Even though legally you should, they probably wouldn't.
Okay.
Whereas here, the transition was just so nice and so kind, and the support that you can get after, just small things like this. So if in the future I get another job, I always know that I have something to fall back on. I won't feel so afraid, like you have to make ends meet, or you have to find the next job. I mean, it is a little bit stress-free here.
Yeah. And then there's also the healthcare aspect as well. I think you mentioned
exactly.
You touched on having some health issues as well in Germany.
Yeah, which is so interesting because I never had any health issues in all the other countries that I was in. And then it just happened so in Germany that I had two health scares, and one was quite critical. The other one was okay, but the one that was quite critical, I was so amazed how amazing. I can't even put it into words. It was just amazing how fast they were, right. How amazing the hospital was. It was clean. They had all the equipment. There was almost like 5 professionals there. Just to let you know, the situation was so bad that I probably, if I was not in Germany, I probably wouldn't be here today.
Wow.
I really
crazy.
believe so.
That's
because
crazy.
It was all at the right time, and I had the right specialists there.
But it's a scary thought. So if you're going to have that emergency anywhere, it may as well be anywhere in
exactly.
In Germany.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then the best thing, it hardly cost me a cent.
Yeah.
But I try and tell this to people, and they're like, "What?" I'm like, "Yes.
This is how it is. This is how it can be." Yeah.
Exactly. So, I mean, that's another plus. So there's situations you never really know what tomorrow will be. Yeah. So if I'm here, at least having those backup plans is just amazing for me.
Yeah. Okay. So yes, there is that. There's definitely that safety net that gives you a little more freedom here. Another thing that I wanted to ask you is coming from Africa. Now, my culture in South Africa was very European culture. And as you said earlier, South Africa is a country of a lot of different kinds of cultures, a lot of different countries.
Exactly.
There's a lot of international countries there. So there's a lot of European nationalities there. There's people who have their roots in European things like the Afrikaans people and the English people. Mm-hmm. And then you also have people from Nigeria, Kenya, Zimbabwe, all of the neighboring lands. It's kind of like a hodgepodge of all the cultures of Africa and all the cultures of the world, really. And for me, my culture was very European, but what I know about the African cultures there, like the Zulus and the Xhosas, they're fundamentally different from the European cultures in that there's more of a collective culture with the African people, but with the European cultures like mine, it's very much this individualistic culture. Yes. Was that a big adjustment, or part of the big adjustment when you came to Germany is seeing the individualistic way of the way things are in Europe?
Yeah, definitely a big part of adjusting for me. And here's the interesting part. I mean, my dad is European and my mom is African. So I did grow up with both perspectives. However, I was more exposed to the African side, and it's one that I felt most closest to or enjoyed. And so coming here was very interesting for me. I mean, back home, it really is a community. For example, you'll just have people coming into your house, the neighbors, it's no problem. You can fill the house and it just feels happy. Yeah. Whereas here, I remember asking my friend, I was like, "Hey, do you think my neighbor would mind if I baked them some cookies or something?" And then my friend actually told me, she's like, "Tanya, I'm not so sure."
Really?
But I mean, of course it was fine. I did it anyway. And of course it was appreciated, but there's always that hesitance because it's not the norm here.
You don't know how they're going to react because there's a good chance that they will be freaked out by someone new showing up with something for them. They'll be like, "What is going on here?
Excuse me. What's in this? Why is this leftover? Why?"
Yeah.
Yeah.
But what you were saying earlier about the warmness of the Africa, the people as well, that is something that I very much miss and still miss to this day, is just that warmth. When I'm back, just the openness of the people and how they smile and greet you, and it's just a whole different.
That's true. Actually, I have it's always stuck with me, this small experience. Basically, when I went to visit Kenya, I think it was my last trip, I went for a walk on the beach on my own. And this girl came up to me. She just said, "Hey, how are you?" And then we just started chatting. And then I told her, like, "Oh yeah, I'm leaving to Germany tomorrow." And I was saying that this would never happen there. And she looked at me, she's like, "Wow, that's so sad." and she probably has nothing. Like, she was just selling like lollipops on the beach.
Sure.
So it wasn't like she didn't have a fabulous life, but basically for her, like, it was like, wow, that's so sad not to have a community of people. And I was like, yeah, I guess you have your pros and cons, right?
Yeah, it's true. And do you find sometimes, now that you've been in Germany for a period of time, that you go back there and you find it strange when people are open and warm to you? Do you get that?
Yes. This is so interesting that you mentioned that. I was thinking that before the podcast, actually. I was like, I wonder how it would be if I go back to Kenya now. It definitely would be difficult. Yeah. I've adjusted so much to here that when I go back, sometimes I do need to keep a distance.
Yeah.
There's just little moments that I'm like, wow, or I kind of lost patience a bit.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I don't have so much patience anymore as I did back then. That's for sure.
Yes, I have the same thing.
I'm just like, why are we wasting time?
Exactly. I get that when I go to a restaurant in South Africa and and you've been sitting for 3 to 5 minutes and no one's approached your table and you're like, what's going on? Where are the people?
What's happening?
It's just, whereas before it was just a normal thing that you would just have.
Exactly.
I find as well that I've become over the years more closed. And the last time I was in South Africa, we went to a run. It was sort of this regular park run that they do in a lot of countries. And I was there standing, waiting for some people to come by. And this guy just came up to me, stood next to me, like you would say within a German's public space or a private space.
Yeah.
And then he just made conversation with me, exactly like you were saying, like the woman on the beach. And I was like, at first I was uncomfortable and I'm like, oh God, now I've got to, but then I thought, no, this is what I miss. Actually, I do miss this
exactly.
the instant connection. I'm never going to see this guy again. Probably, who knows, but it doesn't matter if I see him again or not. We just, for that moment, we are friends. We're going to talk intimately with each other and then we go separate ways. And that is something special.
It is. I agree. I wonder what it would be like if I ended up retiring in Kenya.
And how long it would take for you to go back to that way of being.
Exactly, to that way of life. Yeah.
That's an interesting question. I don't think this is probably a terrible thing to say, but I don't think I could live in South Africa again. I've been here for 13 years in Germany. So I mean that's not an option. Yeah. But I think if I was making a decision, it wouldn't even be on the cards to go back to South Africa.
And that's also understandable. I mean, we've moved around so much and now we're here in Germany. We've adjusted so much that it's just going to be so difficult when I know it's going to be the same for me. I just hope, I mean, Kenya is beautiful. So that's probably one of the reasons why I want to go back. Of course, many others, but I don't know if I would, but it's just a dream of mine. Yeah,
but I could see something like having sort of a split existence. I mean, it's not so possible with me, but I've thought about it because I've got a family and everything, and it's a bit more difficult with 3 kids and whatever else. But I could see a potential, and I know people who do this that kind of spend part of their life there or part of the year there, and then they come back over to Germany for another part of the year. So I can kind of imagine, and seems kind of cool to me. In a way.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. So you spoke about your love for Kenya, and it's very clear. So do you, well, how do I phrase this? Let's put it this way. The feeling that I have with South Africa is I sometimes feel I left because of some issues that South Africa has. So the criminality. And then when I looked at the political system in South Africa as well, I was thinking, where is this going? There was a lot of corruption back then. There's still, I mean, maybe not as much now, but there was a lot of corruption for many years. And a lot of poverty and a lot of economic inequality. And then I made the
Exactly.
decision with my wife to move away from that. So I was essentially saying, I'm going to look for a better life. But I didn't, sometimes I feel bad leaving a country that needs help. And what I did was I went away and made a life for myself somewhere else. Do you ever feel, I don't know if the guilt is the right word, but some kind of bad feelings that you've walked away from Africa?
Of course, definitely. I get the same feeling, but I know we made the choice to move away, and I think it's understandable why. I mean, it's quite obvious to many people, especially in Kenya. The corruption is just on another level, which I don't normally like to talk about, to be honest, because I promote a lot of things to do with Kenya.
Yes.
But the truth of the matter is, and I don't like talking because, there's always this narrative that you want to give people, right?
Yeah.
But I can't lie. There is a lot of corruption in Kenya. There is a lot of insecurities in Kenya that I myself, same thing. I would prefer to live somewhere else. However, I know that there's a lot of people not fortunate enough to find the opportunities that I have.
Yeah.
And so to remove that guilt, I really try my best to help back with the communities back home. It also helps me in a way because then I feel connected to my roots. So for me, I find a balance through that.
Yeah. And I think it's amazing. In fact, it's very inspiring when I see how much you do. You've in fact inspired me to do more for South Africa from Germany, because it's incredible to see what you do. So let's talk about the projects. Get onto that a bit and talk about how you give back to Kenya through your projects. So you've got three main projects.
Exactly.
And it's Swahili Secrets, Bantu Sisters, and the Kenyan Diaspora. So maybe let's go through what are these? What is the Swahili Secrets?
So basically, Swahili Secrets actually started off more like a hobby. Basically was promoting subconsciously. Every time I met somebody, I was always talking about, wow, Kenya is so beautiful. Kenya is like this. The safari is amazing. That people were like, whoa, can we come with you next time? And I was like, yeah, of course. Let's travel to Kenya. And so it kind of started off like that. And I, of course, have many connections from back home. I studied tourism. I also worked in that area. So I knew the right places to go. And often when people want to travel to Africa, they just kind of feel overwhelmed. They're like, oh my gosh, where do I go?
Yeah.
Who do I ask? And so I was kind of that person for a lot of people. So that's what Swahili Secrets is. It's more offering travel services for Kenya. And of course, now it's not so possible with Corona.
Yeah.
So basically what I do now is I stitch I'm in love with African fabric. I'm in love with it so much so that I stitched a bunch of eco-friendly products, and part of the profits then go back to the people that I normally work with or book the tours with, because unfortunately right now they really have nothing.
Yeah. Yeah, those are the people that are struggling. I mean, amongst everyone, but the people in the travel industry in Africa it's really in trouble. And I think I saw something like 20% or something goes to
exactly 20%,
which is huge.
Yeah, I try my best, honestly. The thing is, I know their lifestyle. I've met their families. I worked closely with 3 guys. I've met their families. And they really, at this moment, have absolutely nothing. And it just breaks my heart because here I have everything. Like, so for me not to help, that's where my guilt comes in, I guess. That's what pushes me to look for ideas. Because at the end of the day, I know a lot of people here can give. They just don't know how to.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Or they don't know where.
Exactly.
Yeah.
A lot of people want to. They want to.
A lot of people want to. Yeah. Exactly. And I feel like maybe I can create that option or opportunity for people, and they're able to help. Because I mean, it also makes you feel good when you do something for others. Yeah. So I try to create that space.
Yeah. So you got that's Swahili Secrets. Where do you get your fabrics? Do you order it directly from Kenya and Africa, or how are you getting it?
Yeah, here's the interesting part. There's a lot of talk about African fabric. Is it really African?
Okay.
Because actually it originated in Indonesia, and then during the colonial time, the Dutch found it. They started industrializing it because it was very popular, and then Africans loved it so much that the patterns then became catered to Africans, let's say.
Okay.
However, most of them are actually just manufactured in the Netherlands.
I see. That's interesting.
Yeah.
That is
Isn't
interesting.
it?
That is interesting. Okay, so you do some stitching and then you selling those products on your website.
Exactly.
So I'll put a link to that store, the Swahili Secrets, in the
that
show
would be
notes as well.
amazing.
Yeah, and then you've got Bantu Sisters.
Right. So basically, now this is another project. Again, what I really love to do is to promote the community back home, to give them or to market them more. Because I'm in Europe, I have that access for them. So basically with Swahili Secrets, because I'm doing a lot of the stitching, honestly, it's not something that I enjoy. I do it because I want to be able to give back.
Right.
So recently, I actually started a project back home where women back home are now stitching new products for me. And so I had this idea that now I will start involving artisans and then shipping it to Germany and then selling it. So that's kind of how Bantu Sisters came about, because it has a lot to do with interior decor, like pillows, for example, or little wooden artifacts. And the goal is to promote the artisans back home.
Okay, all right. So that's Bantu Sisters, and then the Kenyan diaspora.
Yeah, same here. I named it, and I'm like, how do I say this?
I'm not sure I've said that name. Anyway, yeah, Kenyan. I think it's diaspora. Yeah, I think it's diaspora.
Yeah, I think so too. So basically this one, again, to do with a lot of, I want to keep that connection with Kenya. So I started this with a very good friend. Basically, we just collect stories from many Kenyans in the diaspora and basically just share their story, communicate their story. And let me tell you, since this project has started, I have felt so hopeful. I have felt so positive, because most of the stories, it's incredible how far people have come. There was one story, for example, where a gentleman came from the slums in Kenya and now he's living in the UK, and the steps he had to take, I was
huge.
like, wow. Yeah, it's incredible. So basically what we do is we just share these stories, and in the hopes that we can be a really strong community together and, again, be able to invest back in Kenya.
Yeah, and of course inspire other people with these stories to show them what's possible.
Definitely.
And how they did it.
Exactly.
That is amazing. So all of those links will be in the show notes, and people can check them out and follow them.
That would be great.
So Tania, what I do, as maybe if you've listened to the podcast, at the end I ask for one bit of advice from my guests. So I'm going to ask you, what advice do you have for people that are coming to Germany?
Oh, definitely. At the top of my head right now is to stay true to yourself. That's something that I struggled with in the beginning, because I was trying to adjust so much that I kind of lost myself. But never forget where you came from, who you are. Just always stay true to yourself and be very authentic.
Yeah. And I think it's a big lesson, because that can happen, that you do lose yourself, and you and there are problems with identity, especially the more that you integrate. There are definitely identity crises that you face. And I think some of the examples that you've given, just from how you live your life and how you've done it is very helpful to people to keep in mind, like that, keeping that strong sense of connection, roots to where you're from, and knowing where you're from, and really, bringing it to the fore. So I think that's going to be very useful for people who. I
hope so.
Yeah, very much so. So Tania, it has been amazing talking to you. You're very inspiring, and I've wanted to get you on the podcast for a long time, and I'm actually sorry I didn't get you on sooner. So thank you so much for taking the time and coming on.
No, this has been amazing for me, especially with a fellow African. Also, it's been exciting and very nice. Also for me to reflect a bit. Yeah, that was also very good.
Yeah. I've all your links are in the show notes. People can find you at those links, and
perfect.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much.
So what I found most interesting in my discussion with Tania was just how she stayed true to her roots by giving back to Africa. And it's really a great way to stay grounded, I think. And please don't forget to check out SwahiliSecrets.com to see the African accessories that she sells. I still need a few questions from you for the Ask a German episode that I'm planning. I've got a few really interesting ones so far, and it's shaping out to be a good episode. If you have a question that you've always been wanting to ask a German that you just maybe never have gotten around to, or you haven't had a satisfactory answer, send the questions to me. You can mail me at info@thegermanyexperience.de, or you can get hold of me on one of my social media accounts and let me know the questions. Now, onto some listener feedback that I got recently. Last week, I mentioned that you can now rate the podcast at thegermanyexperience.de/rate. And I have a link there to go rate it on iTunes if you're an Apple user, or to go to podchaser.com to rate the show. And I got a review from a listener on Podchaser. He wrote, "Great vibes from expats' experiences. Nice to have a good time without all the drama." I've actually spoken to this listener before. He's been in touch with me twice, once to say how much he likes the show, and then another time to tell me when he didn't like an episode. And I love that. He got hold of me on Instagram and basically said, "Hey, this episode that you just put out, I don't like it." And he gave me a reason. We had a reason. We had a chat about it. And as I said, I love that. And you can be like him. I would love to hear your thoughts about the show, good or bad. As I said, I'm doing a listener survey, as I mentioned at the top of the show, but you can also get in touch with me. Mail me directly, info@thegermanyexperience.de, or on any of my social media accounts, and just let me know if you have ideas or thoughts or suggestions or criticisms. I can't say I'll always make changes based on your criticism, by the way, but I want to know because maybe it helps me make the podcast better. Okay, that's it for this week. Music, as always. Theme song by my band 10 Cent Janes, and additional music by Ryan Anderson. Until the end, thank you for listening. Auf Wiederhören.